To those of you who are online. Today, we are lucky to have with us Zoe Speidel Douglas, who is going to be talking about using AI in your writing process, which is a really timely topic right now. I know it's something that a lot of us are struggling with, so I'm pretty excited about this. So Zoe has been teaching college and graduate level writing for over a decade. As OHSU's writing specialist, she is developing the institution's first centralized writing support available to all OHSU students. Outside of work, she is an enthusiastic dog mom, cookie baker, and mystery reader.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for everybody who's online. And thank you, Nicole, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm Zoe Speidel Douglas, and I'm going to talk today about using AI in your writing process. I want to start by saying there's all kinds of ways to use AI. So obviously we're focusing today on how it intersects with the writing that we do, whether that's manuscripts, dissertations, qualifying exams, maybe, hopefully not, and other things. But yeah, so we'll touch a little bit on, when you might use it in research, data visualization, things like that. But primarily we're focusing on writing. So I'm Zoe Speidel Douglas. I have a master's degree in rhetoric and composition, which is the field that focuses on post-secondary literacy education and primarily on writing. I'm the writing specialist in the Academic Success Center, which, if you're not familiar, is down in the Moody building, 3030 Moody, down on the South Waterfront. If you're walking from the Tillicum Crossing Bridge to the tram, it's on your left. It's a little weird brick building tucked down away in a parking lot. So that's where our office is. We have learning support, which is for all students, residents, and postdocs. And that provides students with time management, study skills, exam prep, even for specific exams, board exams, certifying exams, things like that. We have 3 learning specialists, and there's me for writing support, and I support all OHSU students except for School of Nursing, because they've got their own writing support program. And then we're also developing a tutoring program, a peer tutoring program, to try to standardize tutoring across the campus, which is already occurring in a lot of places. So if you're interested in reaching out, that QR link or QR code is the link to our SharePoint site. And that's got a lot more information about who we are, the services we offer, a lot of resources, and also links for how to make an appointment. So we offer one-on-one appointments, we offer workshops, anything like that. So our plan today is to define generative AI, talk about AI tools and how you might select one, talk about crafting prompts for generative AI, of course, the writing process and where we might how we might use generative AI in the writing process, attribution and citation, publishing and how publishing is thinking about AI right now, and then, of course, limitations. Limitations will be sprinkled throughout, as you can imagine, but we'll sort of dive a little deeper into a list there at the end. Hopefully, you'll come away from today's presentation being able to write an effective prompt for a generative AI tool, use generative AI ethically and effectively during the writing process, determine appropriate disclosure and/or citation for generative AI use, and consider the ethics and practicalities of using generative AI. So when I talk about generative AI throughout this presentation, we're going to define it. But as I go forward, I'm primarily referring to programs that allow you to generate text. There's lots of other kinds of generative AI that allow you to produce images, videos, things like that. But I'm primarily talking about text. Okay, so let's define generative AI. They are computer systems that can produce or generate various forms of traditionally human expression in the form of digital content, including language, images, video, and music. Probably most of you are familiar with the basics of what generative AI is, ChatGPT being kind of the most noteworthy one or the most recognizable name. So within generative AI are large language models, and these are a subset of generative AI that are used to deliver text-based formats like prose, poetry, or even programming code. And so how these work is that the user creates a prompt, and we'll talk about what those are, puts that into an AI program. The AI takes all kinds of little bits of language that it has from all kinds of different places. So it's got access to a huge corpus or a huge set of documents from the internet and all other places. We don't know where most of them come from. They're purposely opaque about, like things like ChatGPT are purposely opaque about where all of the information comes from. They break it all up into little tiny bits of text, and then they take some from here, some from there, put it all back together to create like one output for you that is made up of a whole bunch of little parts. And we don't know where any of those little parts come from exactly. So now we'll talk about AI tools, and it's a little hard to see, but the reason I've got a drill there is not just because it's a tool, but also because I don't know if anyone was at last week's symposium on educational excellence, but Logan Jones, who's a practicing physician here, talked about how AI is like a drill. In the hands of a skilled carpenter, a drill can help them create amazing things. In the hands of someone like myself, maybe we can get as far as a small table, probably not a bookshelf, definitely not a chair. And so the idea being that AI is a tool that helps us do things that we are already doing. It's not going to do things for us. It can't think for us. It can't write for us. It needs us. It needs our human component to bring what we know and our expertise and our fact checking and our like checks and balances to this tool. So that's something to think about. So as you're selecting an AI tool to use, so ChatGPT is just one. There's lots of other tools that generate text. Grammarly is using a lot more AI now, so that's another example of an AI tool. It doesn't necessarily create text for you, but does a lot of the checking and rewriting ideas for you. So something to consider is your purpose. Why are you looking for AI? What do you want it to do? If you're looking for images, ChatGPT might not be your game. If you're looking for it to create slides, you need to look for a specific program that does that. Obviously, what you want your deliverable to be. What can it generate for you? How does it work with your workflow? Some of them allow you to collaborate with other people and some don't. Whether it's open source, this might be important to you. I don't know how to work with anything open source, so that's not something I consider, but I know others do. Accuracy and precision, of course. This is sort of the big thing we're all talking about and thinking about. And there's all different levels of accuracy and precision within AI. We'll look at the knowledge cutoff date for certain generative AIs and where those are, different versions that are coming out. By and large, none of them are 100% accurate or 100% precise. So it's just something to consider. You need to know the level of accuracy and precision of the tool that you're using so that you can know where its faults are, where the gaps are going to be that you're going to need to look out for and fill. And then, of course, cost, if it's free or not. I'm not going to go through all this, but I'll share the slides after and you can look at this. This is a generative AI prism, and it really breaks down a whole bunch of different generative AI tools into various categories and sort of helps you navigate. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm looking for, this type of tool, and then shows you a bunch of examples of the different types of tools that you can use. So this goes well beyond tools that generate text, but this is really interesting to me to look at and sort of see what all the different tools are, because there's a lot more out there than I think most of us are aware of because of name recognition, things like ChatGPT, OpenAI. Okay, so now we're going to move on to writing prompts. We only have a few people here in the room, but how many of you have put a prompt into generative AI tool? All right, 50%. That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, some of this might be things you've already done. Prompting is not a perfect science, but there's a lot more coming out now about how to get what you want out of an AI tool. By and large, you need to be specific. So this tool, again, these tools are pulling just a bunch of little bit of information based on statistical data about how language goes together, how the English language goes together, and then also how certain content relates to each other. So you have to be specific about what you want from it. So it's important to be really precise and clear. We're going to look at a couple examples. To provide quality input, the input is whatever data you're giving it to analyze. In our case, I'm talking about writing. We're talking about putting in a paragraph that you want it to look at, putting in an outline you want it to help you with, putting in a full draft that you want it. That's the input, the data that you're giving it. You can also describe the context for an AI tool. And this is actually a really important thing to do. Tell it who it is. What is it thinking like? What does it know already about your topic? What doesn't it know? If I say you are an 8th grade audience, give me feedback on this paper, it's going to give me really different feedback than if I say you're a colleague in my field who has the same educational background as I do. You can give it a situation. You can specify the audience that you want for the deliverable. So write this to an 8th grade audience, or write this to an audience of my peers. You want to be really specific about the tasks or the process or the output and deliverable that you want it to give you. So either the steps you want it to take and also the output that you want it to give to you. And you can refine responses if needed. You can talk back and give feedback back to the tool in your chat. There is a back and forth, and you can continue in the same chat and say, okay, look at that same paragraph and now look at it from this angle. Okay, look at that same one, and okay, that was good, but maybe now a little bit of this, and we'll look at what that means. So this is a prompt that I put in. It's a little hard to see here, but it's a prompt that I put into ChatGPT, the 4.0 version, which is the newest version. You are an easygoing graduate professor in a rhetoric and composition program. Provide general feedback on the introduction of this article that I've written. And then I put in an article for a paper I wrote in grad school. And so I've told it, you're easygoing. So easygoing, I'm not imagining that it's going to like pick out every single little thing that might be wrong with this. I've established that they're a graduate professor in my field. So they have background, they're familiar with who these scholars are. Provide general feedback. That's not very specific. General feedback is, I could be a lot more specific. Maybe I'm asking them, how do I lead up with background information to my thesis statement? Is it clear how I'm framing the conversation or framing my argument? I could be a lot more clear there. And then introduction of this article, that's the input, the data that I'm giving it to analyze. So all those different 4 parts there. So this is the feedback it gave me. I'm not going to read through this, but an example of refinement is, okay, great. Provide feedback on the same introduction, but now be really nitpicky about how it needs to be improved. And I'm going to show you in a second what it came up with. So that's an example there of that refinement. So now's a good place to stop and to talk about the elephant in the room, which is, of course, rules and ethics around generative AI. So we're all encountering a lot of rules around this. There's no consensus in the rules. OHSU doesn't have an institution-wide policy yet. A lot of programs don't. Some instructors are doing it on individual course levels. We'll see later that different publishers have different policies, but we can imagine that those policies are going to change and develop as these tools change and develop as well. And so that's one side of how we act with generative AI, is the rules and the guidelines that we are expected to adhere to. And then the other side of that, or the other part of that, is our own personal ethics and our personal integrity around generative AI. So right now, there are no tools that can 100% of the time, or even majority of the time, accurately identify text that has been generated by generative AI. Also at the symposium last week, somebody presented some data that they asked instructors, how confident are you that you could identify text that was generated by AI? 100% said they were confident they could, and 60% got it wrong when they did identify it. So we really can't. You might be able to tell if you followed a student's writing over time and then suddenly they produce something, that sounds very different. That's usually a good red flag. But just in terms of looking at something that's been written without a lot of other context for what that author's voice sounds like, we're not good at it. And tools are the same. They're not good at it yet. So we're really operating within an honor system right now. And when we look at the publishing information, we'll be talking about, how you disclose and all of this. And again, that's all honor system. We don't have a tool yet where we can run things through. And I would be surprised if we could, because the way these generative AI tools are set up is to create a brand new response to the same question every single time. They're non-deterministic in that way. Okay, so a little bit of writing process. And I should have said too, feel free to stop me at any point if you have comments, questions, anything like that. Okay, so I've broken this up into using AI in the writing process in the early stages versus some of the later stages. So early stages being idea generation, argument formation, outline, like the early parts of drafts. So you could use it to refine research questions. So, hey, I'm thinking about all of these things. What are some research questions that you could pull out of this like word vomit or, this big brain dump of ideas that I have? Identify additional search terms, and actually some publishers do run articles through particular generative AI tools to identify keywords and search terms from them. thinking about how to phrase or form a claim or a thesis statement or a central argument. I'm talking about literally coming up with those sentences. A lot of people have trouble with that. How do I actually write a thesis statement or a central argument? An outline from a zero draft. A zero draft is like that word vomit, brain dump, free write, whatever you want to call it, where you're just writing and writing. Here's what I'm thinking about this topic. Here's all the stuff I know. And then you can put that into a generative AI tool and it can create an outline for you based on what you've written. Analyzing your body paragraph structure. Are my paragraphs flowing? Am I integrating evidence effectively? Different questions like that. Literally writing and trying to come up with ideas for topic sentences, summarizing or paraphrasing sources that you're using, and then generating models of writing. And I would, of course, do this with caution because the LLMs only know what they know. And so we can't always know for sure. Like if you said, I need to write a white paper, can you write me an example of a white paper so I can see what it looks like? You're probably better off looking for examples of white papers online. Because it's not necessarily going to be totally accurate. And I find that the majority of the time it produces something quite short. It wouldn't necessarily produce, a 10-page report about something. So it's important to remember that any of these could be disallowed based on the guidelines that you're being asked to adhere to or the rules or policies you're being asked to adhere to. And also any of these might require some kind of attribution. So we're going to talk about the importance of tracking and documenting your use of generative AI. Hi. So now we'll talk a little bit about using AI in some of these later stages of writing. So you can use it to receive feedback on a draft. And I'm going to show you when I did that with that draft or with the paper that I put in. You can use it to evaluate for audience appropriateness. I know this is something that comes up a lot for people who are writing grants or writing to audiences of non-experts. It can be really hard to go from writing to your colleagues and instructors and people that are really familiar with the work that you do, or at least have a really similar scientific educational background as you, and then going to a more general lay audience, or at least an audience of non-experts in your field. So this could be a really useful tool for that. Summarizing your paper for an abstract, helping you get sort of an idea of like pulling out those main ideas, identifying keywords and search terms. This wouldn't necessarily apply to the writing of a manuscript, but a lot of people are using it for data analysis and visualization. Reviewing your data for errors and bias. Also, AI is not amazing at identifying errors and is very biased, so take that with a grain of salt. Translation, and then bullet points for a lecture or a presentation. So putting in a paper and then saying, I need to present on this, give me an outline. Again, any of these could be disallowed based on the guidelines or the rules that you're adhering to, and any of these might require some form of attribution, whether citation or disclosure, and we'll talk about what those are. Okay, so here's an example of receiving feedback on a draft. So this is the prompt that I talked about earlier. This is the paper that I wrote in grad school, and I put the whole paper in. And something to remember is that you can't really put text into a generative AI. You can, but again, honor system that's been published somewhere else that isn't your own writing, because that copyright is owned by somebody else, and you're putting in information. The generative AI tool might already have access to that paper, but we don't know. And so that's just technically a breach of copyright. So that's why I put in this old paper of mine. So again, I've provided context, role, context about how to behave, context about the role, instructions, and then the input for the data to analyze. And so this is what it came up with. Your introduction sets a clear and engaging foundation. Here's a few points of feedback to refine and strengthen it. So that was the prompt where I said, you're an easygoing graduate professor. And so the results of this request, like my evaluation of the feedback that ChatGPT gave me on this particular prompt, it did provide a rewritten version of my paper, even though I didn't ask for that. Or of my introduction, I should say, using its feedback, even though I didn't ask for that. And that's really interesting because I was using 4.0 and not ChatGPT 4. And when I used ChatGPT 4, it never did that. And then 4.0 did it a bunch of times for me. So I don't know if that's I haven't looked into that, but I found that actually kind of odd that it would purposely rewrite it using its own feedback. And I didn't like that. I didn't even look at the things that it gave me. It identified 5 areas for me to improve. It provided some pretty general guidance on content and structure. So like big picture, I asked it for general feedback and it gave me like big picture feedback. And it didn't really provide any details or examples that helped me understand what it was talking about. So you can imagine like if you get feedback on a paper or you're giving feedback on somebody else's paper and you're like, yeah, the flow's kind of off. Like, okay, now they know the flow's off, but they don't know where you're talking about. They don't know how to fix it. So that was just something I noticed there. Okay, so now I asked it, I said, great, provide feedback on the same introduction, but now be really nitpicky about how it needs to be improved. So I'm changing how it's behaving. It went from being easygoing to being nitpicky. And I thought it was really funny because when it responded to me, it used the word nitpicky like 3 times. So it was like really emphasizing like, I'm doing what you asked me to do. So now it gave me, this went on and on. This was a lot more information, a lot more feedback. Again, it provided a rewritten version using its own feedback, even though I didn't ask for that. This time it identified 9 areas for improvement, but those areas for improvement were not big picture. Those were mostly sentence level mechanics, citation formatting, different ways to be like more concise, a little bit more like the grammar checker or now the conciseness checker that's happening in Microsoft Word, a little bit more of that kind of stuff. Yeah, this sentence doesn't sound quite right. This could be said better. You're using passive voice here, that kind of stuff. But it did provide me multiple examples to show me how to change and improve my writing. So I thought that that was really interesting. So my sort of takeaway from this and from all the times I've used ChatGPT to give me feedback on my writing is really that you kind of have to play around with it. You kind of need to keep refining. Okay, great. I want a lot of detailed feedback, but I want it about the flow of my paper, or I want it about the content organization or my development of the methods section or things like that. You have to really be specific and talk back to it, do a lot of that refinement in your chat with it. Okay, so I put in the full paper this time. I had only put in the intro before. I put in the full paper this time, and I'm asking it to make a presentation outline from that paper. So this is something that really intrigues me because as a potential use for it, I haven't used it yet to create a presentation. I created this presentation points on my own, but I think that's a really interesting idea, like the way it can break it down and pull out the main ideas and sort of give you a place to start with, at least, of like, how do I make slides about this? So I asked it to create an outline for a 30-minute presentation on the paper. I told it that it's for a job talk, so who the audience is going to be, colleagues, but also people who I'm wanting to hire me. So like there's that kind of power dynamic going on. They'll probably be familiar with these scholars, but not about the specifics. I need to make sure I'm discussing how it's relevant to the scholarship I'll be expected to perform. So I gave it like a whole bunch of stuff. Then I put in the whole paper. It gave me actually a way bigger outline than this. So these were the biggest points that it gave me. And then it gave me subpoints of those and then bullet points for each of those smaller things like content that I could actually go on the slides. So it gave me really robust. So I don't know if that was because I said it was a job talk and it's like the stakes are really high, I really need your help, or if that was because it really pulled a lot of stuff out of my paper. However, I asked for a 30-minute presentation specifically, and these all add up to 38 minutes. So just a little like note that it's important to take everything you're getting from generative AI with a bunch of grains of salt, because that seems like a pretty easy thing to me to be able to add up its own numbers of like, this is 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, but it did. And I even went back and I was like, did I write 38? And I wrote 30. So again, just if you were to just like copy paste this onto a document and you were going off that and you're timing yourself, like, yeah, you might get to 30 minutes and they're like, great, you're done. You're like, I still have 8 minutes of my conclusion and Q&A. So just to remember that like nothing you take from generative AI should be taken wholesale. You should always be involved in the checking and the checks and balances aspect of it. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about attribution and citation. And I find this part of generative AI really interesting. I know that Stephen Bedrick works with some of you, and he did a presentation at the Symposium on Educational Excellence last week. And so some of his ideas are in this section because he really got me thinking about how we're attributing AI. So right now, there's no consensus on how to cite AI. And of course, there's no consensus among citation styles about how to cite anything. That's the purpose of different citation styles. Each citation style that exists, the way that they organize information demonstrates different values about the particular fields that use those citation styles. So for example, MLA, you don't even include the year because mostly humanities people are using MLA. So they're looking at texts all the way back to, the dawn of time. But something like APA puts the year right up in front because we care about the recency of the particular research that somebody's engaging with and citing. So that's just sort of to think about, to put in your mind as you're thinking about how these different sources or these different citation styles are looking at AI. So this is AMA. AMA asks for the software name, the version number, the publisher year, access date, and the URL. So that would look like ChatGPT in this first position, which means that when you're doing an in-text citation, you'd be saying, this is from ChatGPT. Got the version, the software company, OpenAI, that created it, and all those other pretty typical things to include. In APA, they're saying author, date, name of tool, large language model, and URL. So it's really interesting to me that they're specifically saying author, which is the company that created the tool. So in their minds, they're putting OpenAI in the author position of whatever text or content is generated by ChatGPT. Name of tool, they want the version in there as well, just like AMA. And they also want to specify that it's a large language model. And then Chicago Manual of Style has two different ways that it's wanting people to look at this. So again, it's using the term author, but really what that looks like when you're citing ChatGPT is you're saying text generated by ChatGPT. So that's in the author position. So it's really calling out right from the start that this is something generated by ChatGPT. This isn't ChatGPT, the author. Again, OpenAI, the date, access, the URL. Another way that Chicago is offering for people to cite this is ChatGPT and then response to and having the prompt specifically in there that you gave it. This is a pretty simplistic way because if you're doing all that refinement like we were talking about, this doesn't really work. And also it's really interesting to me because if I go put that prompt in there, explain how to make pizza dough from common household ingredients, I'm going to get a completely different response than whatever this author got. So we're going to look at that in just a second. But I just show these different ones to demonstrate that people are all thinking about this differently. There's a lot of similarities between these. Of course, they've all mentioned ChatGPT, they've all mentioned OpenAI, they've all mentioned the access date and the URL, but they're all kind of grappling with them in slightly different ways and trying to figure out how would you cite something like this. So to complicate that further is this idea of disclosure. So when we look at publishing policies in just a minute, you'll see that a lot of them encourage disclosure of generative AI use and not necessarily citation of it. So Stephen Bedrick, as I mentioned, did that presentation last week, and his argument was that it doesn't really make sense to be citing generative AI because of what citation is and the foundational reasons that we cite. So citation discloses when something isn't the author's original idea. It gives credit to whoever's idea it actually was. It allows the reader to follow a scholarly thread, and it situates our own ideas in a larger conversation. Citing AI only does the first one. It only discloses that these are words that are not our own, but it doesn't do any of the other ones. We can't give credit to whoever's idea it actually was, whoever's little bits of words came and made up that output, because we don't know. And again, they're purposely opaque about that. We can't know. It doesn't allow the reader to follow a scholarly thread because there is no thread there. There's no there, nothing to follow. And again, it doesn't situate our own ideas in a larger conversation other than the conversation we had with ChatGPT, which is that's not a scholarly conversation. So if we think about disclosure instead, disclosure looks like describing AI's role in the creation of the text. This could also be in the creation of the data visualization, the analysis of the data, anything like that. But in our context right now, we're just talking about in the creation of the text. You might provide prompts and or complete chat logs. So maybe like in the appendices. So people are encouraging people to track and document by saving chat logs that they're using if they plan to use any of that content. there's no way for a reader to follow the thread because again, it just ends at the chat log. And where publishers are encouraging people to do this is maybe in the methods, depending on whether it's related to the research being reported, the acknowledgements, like ChatGPT helped me, supported this project. Thanks for the support of ChatGPT. Might happen in the appendices if there's, larger documents or things you want to demonstrate. But really, primarily and philosophically, what we're doing when we're, talking about how we use ChatGPT is disclosure. We really aren't citing. This doesn't mean you're not going to be asked to cite generative AI if you use it, because like you saw, AMA, APA, Chicago, they're wanting people to cite. But when we look at the publisher policies, they're a little bit more open about it. They're a little bit more loose. I mean, probably each journal is going to have, really specific things for authors to do, but primarily they're leaning toward disclosure. I haven't seen as much about particular citation. So it's just something interesting to think about. So again, you want to cover your bases. Everybody emphasizes that whatever you put out there in the world, you are responsible for those things. So if you accidentally plagiarize because you use ChatGPT, it's not ChatGPT's fault, that's your fault for using it. So this is a way to cover your bases. Obviously follow attribution, citation, disclosure policies that you're being asked to adhere to. Thoroughly track and document your generative AI use. Even if you're using it for moving from a zero draft to an outline, just save that chat. Like you might not be asked to give it, but keep it so that you have it. And then people, you have sort of a paper trail of how you've used it and how you've interacted with it. And then always, and I'm pretty sure anybody would do this in this room, but read sources cited by AI yourself. AI makes stuff up that generates sources. It's called hallucinations. And and so if it creates any sort of citation for you or mentions a source, do not assume that that is correct. Again, many grains of salt. Okay, so here's how publishers are using AI, and they're using it quite a bit, and they have been using it. So this isn't totally brand new that publishers are using AI. They're not using it as a sole decision maker. So a lot of people got really upset, that, there was a myth of automatic rejections going around, that AI, they run all the papers through, some AI tool, and that's the first round of cuts. They might be using AI as one of the inputs for their decisions, but they're not using it as a sole decision maker. At least that's what they're saying. They are looking at it or are using it for suitability scores. So if, Nature journals, for example, oversees a bunch of journals, they're going to, or Elsevier, they're going to run your article through that and come up with a suitability score for a particular journal. Copy editing scores, how much labor is going to go into bringing this manuscript up to standards. Identifying plagiarism in paper mills. Identifying plagiarism is akin to a tool like Turnitin, which we use for students. So it's looking only at things that it also has access to. So not an 100% accurate tool. And again, there isn't a tool where they can run it through and see if it's been generated by AI. Looking for conflicts of interest, between an article and other articles that a person has published. And then the NSF has 4 ways that it uses it specifically. A proposal classifier, a resubmit checker. So this is to compare original texts with or original submissions with revised ones. Vocabulary explorer, which is like a very, exciting title for identifying keywords in your article. And then a suggest reviewer dashboard. So it's using it to pair articles with particular reviewers based on expertise. So here are some publisher generative AI policies. We've got Elsevier, JAMA, NIH, NSF, PLOS, Sage, Science, Springer Nature, and Wiley. So you can see here that all of them, yes, do allow generated text as long as it is documented in some way, and how you document it differs from journal to journal. You can see some of them say methods, results, discussion acknowledgements, methods acknowledgements. This is where they're wanting people to disclose, not cite generative AI, but to disclose how they've used it and in what ways it came up. And primarily this is happening because of the author responsibility that I was talking about, that they are emphasizing in their policies, all authors are responsible for the text they produce. We are trusting you that you've done your due diligence. And this mostly excludes spell and grammar check. They're not asking like, I ran this through Grammarly, or I ran this through Microsoft Word. They're not asking for those sorts of things. You can also see that nobody grants authorships to generative AI. So you're not listing generative AI as a co-author on anything, because again, it isn't creating anything original. It's just creating little bits and parts from everything that it can gather. And then in the last column, this is whether or not reviewers are allowed to use generative AI during peer review process. And this is primarily not allowed because of confidentiality concerns. If I'm putting your work into generative AI, now that's in its large language model, it's sort of eaten that and chewed it all up, and now it's in there. So, you know, again, not exactly traceable, but those ideas are in there. I don't own the copyright to somebody else's work, so I don't have the right to put that in there. But there are a couple of exceptions, not for that particular part, but let's see, PLOS and Wiley allow reviewers to put their own reports into AI to improve them, or I'm assuming some people do it to generate their full report, but you can't put somebody else's content in there. And the NSF says we don't allow reviewers to use non-approved AI tools, but it doesn't say what those AI tools are. So that's why I just said it allows approved AI tools for reviewers, but I'm not sure what those are. I couldn't find that information. So again, we're really operating in an age of the honor system. When it comes to generative AI, attribution, citation, disclosure, there is no AI detection software that has a very high accuracy rate. There's a lot out there that they're claiming to be able to detect it, but there isn't anything yet that has a really high accuracy rate, because trust me, I would know about it, and every teacher would want a license for it here at OHSU. So now we'll talk about a few limitations. Of course, we've talked about a few throughout. I love this post from this author, Joanna, I don't know how to say her last name, Masajewska. You know what the biggest problem with pushing all things AI is? Wrong direction. I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. So I just really like to put this in there because this is a huge limitation of generative AI. A lot of us enjoy the process, maybe not of formulating exact sentences and making everything perfect, but we enjoy the intellectual endeavor of thinking through our ideas, figuring out how to organize them, figuring out how to communicate them, explaining those in words. I know a lot of people hate to write, and that's totally fine. I'm not here to like make everybody want to love writing. And so I really see AI as like being able to do things like that and help people with those particular technical writing parts. But for me, like I don't want it to do those things. I enjoy that part of my work and I want to engage with that. So that's sort of where my own personal integrity or interaction with AI comes. I would love it if it did my laundry and dishes and then I had more time to do other things, or if it did like the more banal stuff of my job so that I could do the more interesting things. So it is funny to me that we're getting it to do a lot of sort of the more exciting parts of our thinking and our critical engagement. Maybe not funny is not the right word, but. So again, like I've said a couple times, it is purposely opaque. All these tools are purposely opaque, the large language models, about where the information comes from. They are very undiscerning. So they will take the same, garbage blog from the internet as they will a published scholarly article, break it all up and give you something new. Like I mentioned, it hallucinates facts and sources. This will probably improve over time. But right now it really does just make stuff up. So you really can't take it at face value. There's a big risk of accidental plagiarism. I mean, every time you're using generative AI text wholesale, you are plagiarizing from somewhere, from multiple places. It's just mixed up enough that we can't identify it. But there's always the risk that you could, plagiarize in a way that is very obvious or significant. There's also a knowledge cutoff date. So each version that comes out can only go so far back in time in terms of the information it has access to. So ChatGPT-4, its knowledge cutoff date is December 2023. And ChatGPT 4.0 weirdly has a cutoff date of earlier than that, of May 2023. So the information it has access to only goes as far back as that, or starts there and goes backward from there. It's also highly biased. So it's really and what I mean by this is it's really biased toward in terms of writing, very standardized written American English. So if you are somebody who speaks another language, who speaks English as your primary language, but just has a really hard time with writing, it's really, really biased against anything that falls out of that deviates from that norm. And so like when people are wanting to use it, like some instructors are starting to want to use it to run student papers through to eliminate bias in their grading. This is a huge red flag to me because it's really quite biased and it's not going to eliminate that. And also it's biased toward whatever information it has access to. So it doesn't have, your whole breadth of experience and your empathy and all of those things that you have that you can bring to evaluating someone's writing. It's questionable whether it's time saving. Something like putting a whole paper in there and generating an outline for a presentation, yeah, maybe. I mean, typically that doesn't take me that long, but that could be time saving. But there's a lot of customization that you often have to do with it, whether it's refining your prompts, whether it's taking the text and then trying to wordsmith it so that it sounds the way you want it to. I used it recently to create some ideas for a mission and a vision statement for an organization I belong to. That is not a process I enjoy. Mission and vision statements are very particular and they're so short and all that. So I was like, let's get some ideas rolling and then we can work with those. So to me, that was a time saver because I feel so awkward writing things like that. That would have taken me a long time. But then the finished product looks completely different than what we got from ChatGPT. So it's sort of just like a jumping off point. But yeah, I would say it's questionable whether it's time saving. Writing, of course, improves our critical thinking. So writing is a way that we can start to articulate the abstract concepts and thoughts that are in our head. So without the process of writing or the process of articulating our thoughts, we do miss out on a lot of that, what to me is an exciting part of the process, that critical thinking part. There's also lots of security and personal data concerns, as we've touched on. And there are labor and environmental concerns as well, just in terms of like, we know how much energy it takes to run a Google search every time. Same things happening with ChatGPT and the like. So this is a really, really excellent resource. This is the Michigan Institute for Data Science out of the University of Michigan. They have this whole platform on using generative AI for scientific research. You probably can't see the little tabs, but they say writing, productivity, data generation and analysis, reporting, considerations in model choices. So this goes beyond using generative AI in writing and really touches on a lot of different aspects of data science. So I really highly encourage anybody, student or otherwise, to look at this source. And of course, they're building it out even more all the time. And there's just a lot of really incredible information in there. And that is all I have. I've got a long page of resources if you're interested in reading more. Yeah, and so I have time for questions or comments or anything.
Thank you for the material. This was helpful. I think,
Oh, good.
I've used to help go from like a rough draft to an outline. I might do some blogging. It helps with that. I've been really hesitant to use it at all for any school assignments because I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to put something in there and then, have it come out like, hey, ChatGPT wrote your paper.
Right. Yeah.
But it's good to know that, I think they're going in the future, there's probably going to be, areas where we can use it maybe to formulate outlines, basic ideas, but as long as the student is still doing the critical thinking, I think that's the key point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think using it in those early stages when a lot of us get frozen by writer's block, anxiety, things like that, that's great for that. Start typing in some ideas and have it start to come up with some statements for you or an outline or whatever. I think that's totally fine. You're not going to be using that text wholesale. You're using it as like a dialectical tool to help you, engage and like report back to you your ideas. Put them in a different frame. But yeah, in terms of like copy paste, I mean, I have seen students work that came in. I knew it was generative AI because I had seen their work over time. And it's just like so obviously not written by them. I mean, you can also, at this point, it might become more sophisticated, but at this point, like I said, it typically generates documents that are much shorter than what you want, at the level that you all are writing at. And and it writes like it's writing for the internet. It's like very short paragraphs. So that was how I was like, this is very odd change of tone all of a sudden. And the student used the word tour de force, or the phrase tour de force. And I was like, I don't know, this is a high schooler. So anyway, so yeah, I would say I wouldn't ever use it wholesale, because partly because I'm a writing teacher, I like to do it, but also because, yeah, you just don't know what you're getting. Yeah.
What about the case, for this blog I've written, sometimes I'll create paragraphs and then I'll run it through to see, can you phrase it better?
Yeah.
Can you improve that? Like, where do you think that might go in academics? Like, do you think that might be something that we are doing in the future, or that's still?
People are already doing that for sure. Yeah. I mean, students definitely are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of articles out there that are like, you don't realize how much we're using it. like every student I've talked to has used it in some capacity, not like necessarily in a plagiarizing way, not necessarily wholesale,
Right.
but they've used it to support their language development. A lot of students for whom English isn't their primary language are using it a lot. Like, hey, here's this paragraph I wrote. How can I make this grammatical? Which is like using Grammarly or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, there's instances where it helps level the playing field in some ways. There's instances where it makes things really complicated and murky. And, so again, I think for me, it really comes down to information literacy, that people are going to use it. We have to teach them how to use it well. We can't really stop people from using it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Do you have any advice for instructors on, what guidelines we should be providing our students, or, obviously, like, this is all really good advice, but as far as ensuring that students are learning what they're supposed to be learning without full-on prohibiting using AI, because we have no control over that.
Yeah.
Any advice?
Yeah, I feel like it's really forcing us to think about what we're assigning. So somebody made a comment when I was at the symposium. I was like, but the homework I give now, somebody can put that into AI and they can probably get the right answer. And so I was like, well, then you really can't be giving that homework anymore. If that's, if it's something a calculator can do, something generative AI can do, we might need to be rethinking how we want students to be, what we want them to be producing.
Yeah.
So really thinking about like, what are the skills I want them to be developing? Not just like how to input something in a program, which is also an important skill, but like, is it evaluating? Is it analyzing? So a lot of different disciplines are doing in different capacities is having AI generate the homework and then having students write their own and do comparisons, evaluate, like critically analyze what generative AI has produced and talk about, whether it's correct, where the gaps are, where it could be more specific, that sort of thing. And that's happening in math, science, art history, all kinds of fields. So I would say that's the most common assignment that I see, is trying to bring AI into the classroom so that it's not sort of this like thing that like lives out there that we want to, pretend like nobody's using. I kind of think of it like abstinence education, like sex education. Like we know they're going to do it, so we need to talk about it because we want them to feel comfortable coming to us to talk about. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that really makes sense. And then in terms of policies, I think it's, you can ask your students to co-create that policy with you. It's often surprising how strict students end up being with those policies. You'd think they'd be like, oh, we can just do everything with AI. But typically they'll be a lot more nuanced than we think they are. Or if you want to create a policy, I would say, actually, Stephen Bedrick sent me a copy of his syllabus, and he talks about how like, here's some appropriate uses of generative AI. Here's some things that aren't allowed that I would consider like outside the bounds. And then he also talks about how some students who require accommodations or who have certain learning challenges might be using AI in different ways that really help them. And so if that's the case, talk to him so that you can talk about getting an accommodation for those. And so that was the first time that I had seen somebody acknowledge that AI might be an assistive technology as well for certain students. So I think it's sort of like the way we talk about plagiarism. It's often like plagiarism's bad, don't do it. But we don't do a lot of discussion around critically, really like, what is plagiarism? Why do we value this? So I think talking about AI in that way of like, why do we value this kind of integrity of not using AI? Where is it useful? Where isn't it? Why don't I want you to use it in these instances? Because I don't want you to miss out on learning these things. Yeah, so it's not, there's no like clear-cut answer on how to do it. And assessment, grading stuff becomes a whole nother beast. So yeah, but I'm always happy to meet with faculty to talk through ideas, if they've got questions or particular, case studies that they want to focus on.
I thought it would be really helpful as a tutor. I mean, it's like for learning machine learning concepts like that I hear in class, like sometimes they go do extra reading, but it can be a lot to go to Wikipedia, go to Stack Overflow, all these different sources. And I put the question to ChatGPT and I get this nice little outline.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are parts that I know are wrong.
Mhm.
So then that forces me to go look up more stuff, come back and I reframe the question, ask it again. So it's this iterative process, and usually in 15 minutes, I can learn the concept really well.
Mm.
Whereas before, maybe it took me an hour or two
Yeah.
for all this materials. So
Yeah, I think that's a great use of it. And like you said, again, it's like it's a tool that in the hands of a capable carpenter, they can create something good. So you need to know enough that you can be able to say, okay, I think I need to check on that, or I need to take this to somebody to check on that. You're not going to just be like, great, I understand it now. Boom, boom. Like ChatGPT told me what it is. So I think that is a great example of engaging critically with content, that you're looking at something and evaluating it for whether it's true, which is something everybody, regardless of what field you're in, needs to be doing these days. So
right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
I'm sorry I couldn't be here for more of it.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. You saw a lot of it already,
I
but
did
yeah,
see-
yeah,
did
I
get
added some
previews.
new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So online, we have a question.
Oh, yeah.
If it is possible to get a copy of your slides.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Should I send them to Lynn?
Yes.
Lynn?
that would be
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, I can send them for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming in person.